Super Rugby Round 5 Saturday games. Pretty good day for Aussie Rugby, hey? Both teams got wins. The Waratahs were slight favourites going into their one and won pretty comfortably. And the Rebels were supposed to get beaten against the Highlanders. And sure enough, they have extended the Aussie team's winning run on New Zealand soil. The Brumbies started it off, and the Rebels have continued it. So, yeah, pretty interesting couple of games. And I thought both of these games, whilst not the full package for 80 minutes, not many games are generally that consistent. But both these games had enough about them that if you were just somebody looking to get into rugby, these would have been decent games to watch. They both had slow patches, but it's to be expected. Not every sport is just like wham bam excitement for the full 80, but you know what I mean. It's a bit late, sorry, this review. Since New Zealand's had its first coronavirus case, pandemonium. Tried to go shopping this morning. Lucky I got to the shop first thing, which we usually do on a Saturday. It's bananas out there. I should say onions. One lady next to me had like 4 bags of onions. She was trying to buy literally every onion they have. Some of us need onions as well, lady. Come on, man. Anyway, the first game, Highlanders Rebels. Highlanders went into that one as pretty big favourites, and they got pretty well beaten. It was a close game. The Rebels pretty much got into a lead and never surrendered it. It had a couple of yellow cards. But like I said, it's an interesting one, and it's a good bounce back from Aussie teams, because it was only a week or two ago that they were just getting crucified in the media about being poor, and Dave Rennie was going to have struggle picking kind of 15 good players to compete, and big loss records and whatnot. And now they've got two wins in a row on New Zealand soil. It's the first time the Rebels have won down in Dunedin, which is generally not a very easy place to go and win. You got to admit that the Highlanders, I think, only had one All Black playing, and that was Aaron Smith. So where the Highlanders are at this year is also an emerging story as well. The Rebels had all the pressure early, eventually scored through Meeks to make it 7-0. They got a maul try from Rangi to make it 14-0 on 12, and then on about 20 minutes, the Highlanders on attack. A loose ball gets picked up by Kellaway, who tears down the other end of the field, and he runs diagonally from the right wing on his own kind of 22 all the way to kind of the left wing on the Highlanders goal line, because Nardeki was chasing him, and I thought Nardeki's going to run him down. Callaway with the angle was just quick enough. Like their pace was, I think Nardeki was probably a touch faster because Callaway couldn't just run in a straight line, but he did enough, man. He's got more wheels than I thought. Either that or Nareki's a bit slower than I thought. But good try, and Tamur was kicking everything. So 21-0 after 20 minutes. The Rebels were looking very good. They only scored 28 points, so it was a phenomenal start. They weren't able to maintain it. The Highlanders managed to score 2 tries before half time. One of them was through McKay, and that was after they'd turned the Rebels over in their own 22, so maybe the Rebels were getting a little bit too cocky, maybe should have just booted it. And Parate's offload and Aaron Smith's try was, well, it wasn't even really offload, just passed behind the back. It was phenomenal. That was well worth the price of admission to see that. So it was 21-14 at half-time, and you thought, man, that's pretty bad from the Rebels, because they had enough in that first half to be out by more than 7 points, but it wasn't to be. And the Highlanders, even though they've lost, they've proved to be a team that doesn't roll over. They always see a way back into the game. They had a try not given for a forward pass in the second half, did the Highlanders, but Callaway got another very similar try, another angled run. This one from an intercept of an Aaron Smith pass. He just had an angled run and was able to outrun his chasers, 28-14. So the last Rebels points is kind of on 52 minutes. That's it. They don't score for the final remainder of the game. Gregory got one for the Highlanders on the right wing. And the Rebels had been given away so many advantages and penalties that they were lucky he scored there, because they probably would have got yellow carded. But they were to get yellow carded a bit later, but not before Gregory himself got yellow carded. He was taken out. He took out Dane Hill-Petty in the air, and then Meeks got yellow carded not long after. It was just, they went back down into the Rebels half, and he gave away an offside penalty. And the ref was like, "Nah, I didn't stop the clock earlier just because that try was scored. You're going to give away another penalty, I'm just going to card you." So it was 14-14 for a while. The Highlanders kicked the penalty, so the 14-14 period was 3-0 to the Highlanders. But Nadeki got a yellow card right towards the finish. I saw there was a bit of a backlash on social media about that yellow card, because essentially I think both the guys, Dane Hill-Petty jumped high for the ball. Nadeki just kind of stood there, and Dane Hill-Petty fell on top of him. And people say, well, he was just standing there. But as far as I'm aware, you even though you're just standing there, you can't just stand there. You just can't do that. You've got to get out the way. If you know there's a contestable ball coming, it's like you've got to be kind of 2 steps ahead. Before you even put yourself into that position, you've got to make a call. Am I going to compete for the ball or no? And if no, just stay out the way. Because if you put yourself in the position and then decide, actually, no, I'm not going to jump, I'm just going to stand and just hope nothing happens, you're still going to get carded. It's all about protecting the guy in the air. It may seem counterintuitive, but I think the ref probably got it right. Not that I really like commenting about refereeing decisions, because I sure haven't read the rugby rules. I just know what we all know from watching the game. But yeah, second yellow card didn't help. That being said, the Rebels are another team that had like a minute to go against the Highlanders and just couldn't kill off the minute. The Highlanders don't give up. The Rebels went through like 2 ruck phases, and then, like, you know, pick your first man, pick from the ruck, go. Second man gets turned over. Ridiculous. Like, it happened when the Highlanders snuck that result against the Brumbies. I don't know what it is about the Highlanders. Either they don't go up or teams let up. But interestingly, the Highlanders had advantage. Aaron Smith said to the ref, "I'll take the advantage," which is the first. I don't think I've ever heard that. Usually they like deliberately stuff up the advantage so they get the advantage. But Aaron Smith says, "No, just give it to us," which was a bit of a weird decision because the line-out had been pretty terrible the whole game. And sure enough, it finished with the Highlanders not being able to secure that ball. So they kick for touch, throw in, goes nowhere. Rebels, game over. So yeah, it was a bit messy at times. There were kind of turnovers galore. The Highlanders' defence held early, but eventually conceded some points. Lynchus had what seems like a pretty terrible injury. He was writhing around on the ground in absolute pain. So that was pretty sickening to see. But yeah, still had some high skills. The Highlanders keep it exciting with that defence at the end. Yeah, the zoo in Dunedin looked awesome. That's the one end of the ground where they sell the cheap seats for the students. Students are back in town. It must have been close to full, and they were making noise, and it was just a great look for Super Rugby. So they may have not got the result they wanted. Don't know how many of them go back for next home game, but either way, it was a pretty entertaining one. So yeah, final stats: run meters 333 to 510. So the Rebels had that, but the Highlanders edged position and territory 52%. But if you look at it half by half, first half Rebels 60% possession, 65% territory. Second half Highlanders 67% possession, 72% territory. So ultimate game of 2 halves. Rebels just took more chances in their half. Lineouts, neither was good. Highlanders 70%, Rebels 72%. Very costly, especially for the Highlanders in this one. Tackling percentages both in the 80s. Tu'u for the Highlanders had 79 run meters, 3 defenders beaten. Callaway 157 run meters, 2 clean breaks, which is his 2 tries, and 4 defenders beaten. So I thought overall pretty entertaining game. Very fun one to watch. And yeah, good to see the Rebels get a win over here. Where does this put the Highlanders? I'm real curious to see how the Highlanders are going to go against the Blues, because one of them is probably the worst team in New Zealand. We'll find out eventually. Next was the Waratahs against the Lions. And this is a great one because prior to this game I said the Lions haven't looked too bad. Their record's not great, but they've been playing okay. Whereas the Waratahs, apart from a few good moments against the Crusaders, have ultimately looked terrible. So I thought this one, Lions are definitely looking the better team. 29 points to 17. Whatever the Waratahs did during their bye, it seemed to work because they just looked a lot more fluid in this one, and the defense was just absolutely on the money. The Lions, whose defense for the last few years has always been a bit of a problem. They would have been one of the worst defending teams in Super Rugby. The thing is, previously, they just used to be able to outscore you. But if they're not scoring enough points, it's going to be a long season. It was played, I forget which ground it was now. It's one that's got an interesting pattern on the seats. So it's like not just like a standard one colour. It was kind of hard to get a feeling for how many people attended that one. If anyone's got the attendance numbers, let me know. It didn't look very well attended, but the fact that the seats are painted different colours, and sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it's still really obvious. This one was kind of, I guess it's quite deliberate on the eyes. It's not striking all the empty seats. So yeah, either way, hopefully they get better crowds after this game because it was a good win. Waratahs got a try early through Bell. A lot of early pressure. They made it 7-0. It was a very determined start from them, and Bell was getting line breaks left, right, and centre for a big prop, young prop. It was great stuff to see. Ruben Schoolman got a yellow card early for a push in the face on what's his name, Simmons, on the ground. So he kind of not really punched him, but kind of pushed him with his forearm. So yellow card for that one. Kind of silly stuff. You can't be doing that. There's too many cameras around these days. And Swinton got a try on the right wing again after Bell had a nice line break in the lead up to it. Hooper with a nice long pass. 14-0 to the Tars. 7 points during the yellow card. Lions did kick a penalty during the yellow card, which is always a welcome thing. If you can get 3 points and kill off about a minute during the yellow card, that's perfect for the team with the man down. However, the Tars got a try through Dempsey. They missed the conversion, so it was 19-3, 12 points to 3 during the yellow card. Pretty successful period for the Tars. I thought one of the passes in that try might have been forward, but nobody mentioned it a damn, and the TMO didn't seem to mention it, so I guess they looked at it. I mean, just one angle, I was like, worth a second look, but I'm assuming because the TMO seems to check everything these days, they would have checked it. Swinton got a yellow card later on for a late hit on Out Yankees. They had to double check whether he'd been hit in the head or hit in the chest. They said it was chest, so it was yellow rather than red. That being said, Elton still did have to go off for an HIA. When he told him you're going off for an HIA, Elton said, no, he just hit me good hit in the chest, like I'm fine. But the referee, it's out of his hands at that point. It's the medical team who say yellow cards, not yellow card, HIA, so he had to go off. And he passed, he came back, but he was gone like a full 10 minutes, which was, man, it took a long time just to get done. The Lions did get a maul try during that yellow card period. Marnus Schoolman who got the first of his 2 tries to make it 19-10, kind of game on. And the Tars, their goal kicking, man. They had a chance to kick a penalty during the yellow card, and I was like, it's pretty much straight in front. Bit of distance on it, but nah, bad kick. And so the yellow card period was over 7-0. It would have been nicer for the Tars to make it 7-3. And the fact that they were missing their goal kicks kind of left the Lions within touching distance this one. 54 minutes, the Tars, probably their best team try of the game. They got it through Ram, heaps of good passes in the build-up, all from turnover ball. 24-0, the conversion did hit the post for that one. Schoolman, though, got a second try, 2 phases after a big maul to make it 24-17 on 64 minutes. That period of the game, 24-17, you're thinking, how are the Tars still not running away with this game? They should have been, but they missed 2 penalties to take it beyond the 7 through Kirtley Beale, because Harrison had been taking the kicks up to that point. But 76 minutes, Faulkner got the try, which just kind of sealed the deal for the Tars. So 29 points to 17. Of course, they missed the conversion. So apart from the goal kicking, it was a good effort from the Tars. They didn't have that much ball, but they always looked fairly comfortable in terms of their defensive effort. There were handbags in this game as well, so it was a fairly fired up game. I guess both these teams pretty desperate to get a win. Like I mentioned, Bell with his line breaks was impressive. The Tahs defense, especially before half time, I think the Lions went 13, 14 phases before they coughed the ball up. It was a more difficult effort for the Tahs as well. The fact that Simmons went off before half time, Gordon went off before half time, and Wakanita Wase went off at half time. So they were having to play some guys from the bench earlier than they would have liked, and yet they still won pretty easily in the end. The scrums were a bit messy. The ref had to keep... he had a couple of words with the front rows to tell them to get their act together, which is a bit frustrating at times as a viewer to watch. But what's not frustrating to watch is still Elton Yankees. He is one of the best guys in the game at kicking the ball for touch when he's got a penalty. And that doesn't sound like a great skill, but he can get it pretty much bang on the 5 meter mark more than other guys can. Other guys will get you 10 meters out, 12 meters out. He, as much as he can, will get as many meters as he can, which just gives his forwards so much more to work with in terms of going for a try. And it did help for their second try with Schoolman. Tackling percentages, I guess the story of this one, 92% for the Tahs, 92 test match quality, 74 for the Lions, and for Super Rugby, even for Super Rugby, that's bad. 69 tackles they had to make, the Tahs had to make 160, so a lot more tackles, but so many fewer missed. Goal kicking, 100% for the Lions, 25% for the Waratahs. That is a bit of a concern. Run meters 543 to 539, so pretty even. But you look at the possession and territory, the Lions had 61% of both. So by that, they should be getting a lot more run meters than the Tahs, but they were not able to do so. Green had 117 run meters, 4 defenders beaten. Harrison had 101 run meters, 7 defenders beaten, and he did look pretty good apart from his later goal kicking. So, yeah. Pretty good game. Pretty entertaining. Good on the Tahs for getting the win. For telling me to shut my mouth, because I was pretty sure they were going to get a bit of a hiding. But nope. The Lions were pretty well beaten. So good wins to the Rebels and the Tahs this Friday. And we bring on the Saturday games tonight. The first one here in New Zealand is early 4 something, and the next one's not till 9 something. So a bit of a gap, which is an unusual one. But yeah, we'll see how things go. You guys let me know your thoughts on the games. How did you think they went? Drop us a like on the video. It helps out if you are happy to do so. But yeah, cheers guys, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.